Huelga strike. The 1965 Delano grape strike. Striking for change. It's in Spanish on the right. It was 1965 in Delano, a small port town in Central California. Some of the most overlooked, vulnerable people in the country joined forces to improve their lives. In fact, they changed the world. These were farm workers, as in many areas they labored under punishing conditions for scanty wages. Desperate for change, they went on strike. Filipino workers started the strike, then reached out to Latino workers for support. Their spark of resistance grew into a flame, and this local strike grew into a national labor movement. Cesar Chavez, the leader of the Latino organizers, became the most important Mexican-American leader of the 20th century. That is Volvo. Join the movement, pick up a sign, and join the picket line. Imagine what was on the midst of the strikers in 1965. Today the struggles to help farm worker goes on. Will you add your energy to the fight for justice? Oh, sorry, Cesar. When the man who feeds the world by toiling in the fields is himself deprived of the basic rights of feeding, sheltering, and caring for his own family, the whole community of man is sick. Why go on strike? Despite their skill, speed, stamina, and long hours, farm workers earned little. Their families lived in poverty. Young children had to work the fields. This, plus extremely harsh working and living conditions, limited their lives. Farm work wasn't covered by the laws requiring basic safety and sanitation for workers in other trades. Employers did not have to supply bathrooms and drinking water. Too often, shacks served as housing. Chemicals applied too freely on the field. Sickened workers. Days off for illness were not permitted. Working conditions. Warning, these grapes are treated with the poison. The workers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 on his head. Indigenous workers, Hispanic, Latino, and I'm sure black workers too. Kids. What is at stake in human dignity? If a man is not accorded respect, he cannot respect himself. And if he does not respect himself, he cannot demand it. Cesar Chavez. Put yourself in this timeline. How do you connect to these events? How did they affect you? Write your story on a piece of paper and attach it using the strip below the wood. So all these 1890 events involving Cesar Chavez, events involving civil rights or labor history, events during the Delano strike. This would be a whole other video. All these different stories. I love this. Little girl at labor camp, 1966, Lewis. Farm worker housing. Farm worker housing. Cesar. To feed your family and probably the community of the family. Ice chest, thermos, tools, sandals, overalls, windbreaker. Oh, I love these windbreakers. Candle, Guadalupe. It's tin. These tin roofs. John Steinbeck. AM FM to get your music and stories. Wash. Flathead shovel, the hoe. You know, I never understood what these ones were with the square. The un-American dream. Both citizens and immigrants, mostly people of color, farm workers were housed in camps, segregated by race and outside local communities. Children rarely got beyond grade school as their families followed work from field to field and town to town. Isolated from most of society and constantly on the move, these people faced racism and disrespect. Opportunity was not knocking on these doors. Too often, any hope for a better life vanished. People pay big money to live in these houses now and have them shipped. Must the hunger become anger and the anger fury before anything will be done? Oh, look, author of Grapes of Wrath, John Steinbeck, and Salinas. I'm going to stop by there later, I hope. Felipe Cantu, Rosenda, Montana, and Picketers, 1966. Pleading with strike breakers. Juan Guajardo, Tony Mendez, Manuel Vasquez, Luis Valdez, Earl Franklin, Frankie Caleo, Marqueo Bustos, Felix Zapata, Austin Lira, and other strikers. Marcos Munoz talking to strikebreakers. So everybody's holding a picket line. There was still people working for next to nothing. The strike begins. On the right is in Spanish. I apologize, I don't know how to do this properly. In September 1965, commercial vineyards around Delano refused to match only slightly higher wages offered in other areas. Filipino American workers made the tough decision to strike. To break strikes, commercial growers pitted one race against another. They hired Latinos to break Filipino strikes and vice versa. To prevent this, Larry Idlong of the Filipino Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee asked the Mexican Americans NFWA, National Farm Workers Association, to join their strikes. Strike take enormous efforts. A leader of the NWFA, Cesar Chavez, worried that the young association was not yet strong enough, yet he knew he must join forces as one union. Thus began a historic multiracial labor struggle for La Casta, the cause of justice. Shouts a Viva la Huelga and the Filipino Huelga rang out in Delano. Unfair to AWOC, AFCL, CIO refuses to negotiate wages and conditions. The leaders. And here they'll have the names and the pictures, and then English and then Spanish. Cesar Chavez, farm worker turned community organizer. Cesar left a good paying job and spent his savings to start unionizing workers. Without a union, the people are always cheated, and they are so innocent, he said. In joining the grape strike, he brought his talents for organizing and speaking plus his strong commitment to further La Casa through nonviolent action. Larry Dulé Itliong, charismatic and determined, Itliong led the Filipino Union in the strike that started a nationwide grape boycott. With Cesar, he oversaw the merger of the Filipino AWOC with the Mexican-American NFWA. They labored side by side in the UFW until 1971. Having organized workers from Alaska to California, Itliong has been called one of the fathers of the West Coast labor movement. Dolores Huerta. Already a labor activist, Huerta met Cesar in 1960, driven to focus on farm workers' issues. They started the NFWA in 1962. Her strength as an organizer and her resolve as a person proved indispensable during the grape strike and beyond. She fought not only for farm workers, but also for equal treatment of women and minorities. Philip Veracruz. First with Itliong and the WOC, then with Cesar Chavez. It was Cesar, Huerta, and Itliong. This Filipino farm worker became a leader in the grape strike and an officer in the UFW. His passionate but quiet dedication grew to include workers of all races and backgrounds. Veracruz later played a big role in the building a residence for aging Filipino workers without homes or families. Helen Chavez. Helen provided quietly fierce support to her husband, Cesar, and to the union. She would picket before dawn and then go to work keeping the union books. She led the credit union whose loans kept thousands of farm workers over the years. A Californian by birth and farm worker by age 14, she returned to the fields to earn money while Cesar started organizing in Delano. Gilbert Padilla. Gilbert Padilla worked with Cesar Chavez in the community service organization in the 1950s. Padilla left CSO to start the National Farm Workers Association. He pushed the NFW to join the Filipino-led Delano grape strike in '65, led the historic Texas melon strike in '66, helped lead the international grape boycott, and was a UFW officer his entire 18 years with the union, including secretary-treasurer. Talking to strikebreakers. Catalino, Tacloban, and Manuel Vasquez. 1966. William King on picket line, 66. On the picket line during the pruning season, Helaguistas, including Gustavo Espinoza, Juan Juardo, Miguel Vasquez, Carolina Franco, Manuel Vasquez, and Roberto Bustos. Marchers arrive in the state capitol in Sacramento. Hospital institutional workers, Local 250, building services, Catholic, I don't know, Vacaville, Santa Clara Valley Corps supports farm workers, Huelga, Los Angeles local chapter, warehouse, Bakersfield CSO, this took over Sacramento. Oh, baby. Okay. Man with a mission. Cesar himself inspired people to persevere, to endure. All of his actions in his 3 long, painful fasts mostly deeply moved people. Cesar's first fast was driven by violence on picket lines. Nonviolence is not inaction. It is not discussion. It is not for the timid or weak. Nonviolence is hard work, he wrote. When some strikers found it hard to remain nonviolent when attacked, Caesar's disappointment was with himself. As an act of penance for not being able to convince them, Cesar began a fast in 68. As word of his weakening health spread, thousands showed up to pledge nonviolence. After 25 days, Cesar took bread with Senator Robert F. Kennedy by his side. Altogether, Cesar undertook 3 long, grueling fasts. They may have well contributed to his death at age 66. Eduardo Campos, Cesar and Helen, Mac Lyons, Bobby Kennedy, Paul Schrade, and Juan Flores. Picket sign with vineyard in the background. Books and images in Cesar's family radiate his values: family, faith, nonviolence, service, education. Cesar had to leave school after 8th grade. From then on, anchored by the lessons in his mother's dichos, sayings, he sought ideas in a larger world. The window into Cesar's life and work. A look into Cesar's office to glimpse meaningful objects from his life. Mi abuela tata Cesar Chavez, my grandfather Cesar Chavez, listened to Cesar's granddaughter's stories about the life lessons he imparted to her about faith, respect, and the importance of helping others. 2 minutes. I'm going to do this in a minute. Determined and an innovative leader, Cesar brings determination, innovation to La Casa, and the movement succeeds overwhelming odds. Family. All the cassettes. Look at that phone. To present day. This is all 2016 Helen Chavez. Oh, October 25th. Cesar travels to Yuma, Arizona, to testify in a case brought against the union by a vegetable grower suing for damages related to UFW boycott. He dies in his sleep at the age of 66 while staying at the modest home of a retired farm worker in nearby San Luis, Arizona. It's only 30 miles from his birthplace. All these strike teamwork. Managing a strike is not easy. People with little experience beyond the fields had to learn fast. We didn't know how to put that work together in the organization, says Cesar. We learned how to help people by making them responsible. First, the new union had to bridge distrust between the races and cultures involved. The strikers created community. They shared meals and traditions. At weekly meetings, they exchanged updates and laughs. They solved problems together. 2 unions with distinct cultures became a united group with a shared purpose. Together, the workers learned many tools to advance La Casa, to get their news to the world beyond Delano. Picketing, boycotts, marches, organized communication. These were new to most strikers. It took time, effort, and money, all in short supply. In time, however, the world took notice. Tulare County picket line, Chris Hartmeyer, Pablo Espinoza, striker Alfred Vasquez, Amelia Urube, Pete Velasco, Vincent Rodriguez, and strike, 1968. Jerry Cohen, Antonio Arendian at Friday night meetings. The Martyrs. Okay, here's outside another video. This is above, or on the wall by his graves, him and his wife and his 2 dogs. That's a water fountain. So, the martyrs. Jewish, Muslim, and Christian. The first 5 people to die for La Casa came from these religious traditions. All of them died on a picket line. 5 streams of water from the fountain in the memorial garden outside symbolize their sacrifice. And then Freeman, 20-year-old student from New York, was hit by a truck in 72. Nagi Daifula was beaten to death by a sheriff deputy in 73. This Yemeni immigrant was 24. Farm worker Juan de la Cruz was 60 when he was shot from a passing truck in 73. Rufino Contreras, a 28-year-old farm worker, was shot by a field owner agent in 79. Rene Lopez, 21-year-old, was shot in 83 by a gunman hired by the dairy where he worked. Ain't that some shit? Faith in action. For it is in giving of what we receive. Cesar took these words of St. Francis of Assisi to heart, and faith moved many supporters to rally in support of La Casa. Cesar firmly believed that people would draw strength from whatever spiritual teachings they followed. He called upon the Roman Catholic faith for much of his strength, but he felt strongly that the respect for the faith of others stands on the same footing as culture. Through their work in early immigration ministries, many religious people came to know farm workers and their struggles. Once the strike began, their commitment to help was already in place. Others learned of it when their churches, temples, and synagogues officially supported the strike. Take church with you. Shenley contract negotiations. Ignacio Jordan, Dolores Padilla, Luis Perez, Leon Dolores Huerta, Gilbert Padilla, Sidney Korshak, Daniel Sanchez, Cesar Chavez, Guadalupe Aviso, Luis Cancio, Manuel Oronde. Rachel Orendian, Esther Urande, Fina Hernandez, Flores Abigania, Carmen Cerda, and Bonnie Chatfield. Philip Veracruz, 1968 at Wayne State. Young woman with Huelga flag. Farm worker demonstration, Julio Hernandez and his son, John and Antonio Orendon. Juan Huerta with fourth grandchild. Here's some powerful pictures. Ernie de la Muerte. Delano grape strike workers. United Auto Workers support Larry Itleong, Walter Ruther, Cesar Chavez, Paul Schrader, Sal Gonzalez, 65. Walter Ruther. Jorge Zaragoza. Surviving a strike. Marches in the San Joaquin Valley, March 1966. Striking is even harder than working, and the Delano grape strike lasted 5 long years. Delano grape. Money, time, and energy always fell short. What kept strikers and their families going? We draw our strength from the very despair in which we have been forced to live, Cesar said. Strikers relied on their faith, their dedication to nonviolence, and their drive for a better life for their children. Union staff earned just $5 a week. Strikers lived on donated food and clothing. Over time, most lost homes and cars, friends and family. They lived with threats and the fear of violence. The financial and social resources of corporate agriculture seemed overwhelming. Sacrifices by farm workers and their supporters won union contracts for 60,000 California farm workers. They built the first farm workers union that had endured what was very, very hard.